I was reviewing my chart with a new ophthalmologist. He was an older white man. My chart says I have CPTSD, and he goes, "From what?" Like it was a gossip sesh. I responded by telling him in the most gruesome terms. He seemed shocked. I don't know why he thought the things that cause my CPTSD wouldn't be that bad. This and so many medical professionals who tell me what I need to feel safe is wrong, ask other inappropriate questions, agree, and then immediately forget what I asked for, etc. Does anyone else have insane stories like this? One of my previous psychologists knew absolutely nothing about treating trauma. It was too difficult for me to explain what I'd been through out loud, so I wrote a piece of it in a letter and gave it to him to read. He was the first person I told. His response: "You can choose to hold on to this, or you can choose to let it go." A psychiatrist I had when I was 12 would trigger me on purpose, ridicule me, and say shit like, "You're just dramatic, you're just exaggerating, you don't have the capacity to feel that much pain." Then was absolutely baffled why I wasn't showing any improvement, tried to sugarcoat me into considering shock therapy via euphemisms. Some people should not be working in the mental health field, holy shit. If my psychiatrist spoke to me like that, I think he was having some kind of mental health episode himself. That was not a proper way to treat a patient at all, and I'm sorry you experienced that from someone who had that kind of power over you as a child. Yeah, I was thankfully a pretty observant and fed-up kid and could recognize that she was absolutely crazy, though it was still traumatic and I almost fell down into anti-psychiatry rabbit holes in my early teens. I'm more concerned with the fact that this lady was mainly working with medium to heavy support need autistic kids under 10 years old. I really hope she gets exposed for the absolute shit of a person she is. Dr. Nutsack Buttcrack says, "My therapist of 2 years did this to me. I realized he was a narcissist. It gave me PTSD. ETA? Obviously frog boiling situation. Eventually he was yelling at me to stop talking, laughing at me when I would cry, tell me my previous trauma was no big deal." Wow, great advice, Doc. No wonder you're so rich and I'm so broke. Wow, that's infuriating. Like, how do they even get through training with those responses? Many are trained wrong on purpose. To sustain abuse. To pretend that the symptoms are the problems. I told my very first therapist that my mom abuses me and had recently purchased a gun. I was worried mom would kill me if I didn't kill myself first. Her response: "Sometimes our anxiety causes us to overthink. It's hard being a parent to a teenager. Have you talked to her about your suicidal thoughts?" I called her a stupid bitch because she is, and I left. I'm really glad you gave an appropriate response to her. That's so incompetent of her. Actually deadly of her. To just casually write off those kinds of concerns. My therapist openly mocked me to my face in session like my mother or grandmother would have when I was a little kid. Mimicking the face I made when a child part came up when she was pushing me on some stuff I wasn't ready to approach. It should have been an opportunity for major growth, instead it reinforced trauma responses and isolation. I'll be trying to fix the harm she did for decades. She implemented partial prolonged exposure protocols without developing grounding tools while doing therapy over video after diagnosing me with alexithymia, and expecting me to let her know when things aren't okay because she couldn't read me. Emotional blindness. When I was 13, I had a female PCP for the first time. After completing the normal testicle check, she was putting the waistband of my underwear back up when she hesitated, pulled them back down, grabbed a handful of genitals and started massaging and jiggling it around. When my body started responding, she snapped my underwear back up, made a disgusted, grossed out noise as she stormed out and slammed the door behind her. I thought I was in so much trouble. 32 years later, and I'm still terrified of accidentally getting an erection at an inappropriate time, and I'm uncomfortable with women seeing my erection during sex. What the fuck? I'm so sorry you went through this abuse. It's fucked up when the professionals who are supposed to help us actually make everything worse. Thank you. These are supposed to be some of the most trusted individuals that we work with. Slowly realizing the therapist I was talking to was just a church guidance counselor. I was finally allowed to see a therapist, and once I started opening up, she really started pushing me to give my life to Christ, even though I was Christian at the time, and tried to reframe any abuse as me being a disobedient child needing the rod, as the Bible says. I felt so silly for falling for such an obvious trap, but I was like 12, so I'm learning not to blame myself. Gross. These holy rollers do way more harm than good. Please don't blame yourself. There is nothing to blame yourself for. The person was an incompetent fool. I had a similar experience and want to validate how unpleasant and unprofessional this must have been for you. I still have words like disobey, sinned, and punish in my everyday conversations. It startles me sometimes. The more I heal, the more I notice it and remove them. I'm in my 40s. The brainwashing is real. What are these people in Canada? I don't think anybody would do that here. At least they wouldn't have a job like that. Yeah, abuse is rampant in America. Abusers are protected, victims are erased, and there's not a lot we could do about it. It's very difficult to find good therapists. It's very difficult to find good doctors. It's very difficult to find anyone who is genuinely trying to help us and not just taking advantage of us because everyone is competing to survive, because everyone has to do whatever they have to do to make money. Thank you for the kindness. I'm trying to break down those walls in my mind. I'll usually never do anything that could help me, no matter how minor or easy it is to do, because suffering builds character and all that. I hate how crucial self-harm and neglect is to Puritan Christians, especially when Jesus himself represented love and kindness. I hope you're doing better as well. Yeah, it's crazy how many shitty therapists there are. There might even be a Reddit thread for that. There's therapy abuse. Did anyone else's mental health significantly improve after quitting therapy? It's so freeing not to have to hold on to my day-to-day trauma so I can tell it to a therapist who will instruct me how to properly work through it and then chastise me for having negative emotions. Yeah, this is a lot of what it is. Like, the therapists, like, try to get you to embrace toxic positivity. A therapist that I was going to, that I was paying for myself, well, maybe with my work insurance at the time, she was terrible. She was like, oh, well, those qualities of your parents that bother you, those are just characteristics, you know? Just look at them as, like, part of who they are. Like, they are abusive people. That's not okay. We don't normalize that. We don't accept that. We push back on them. We don't tell me to accept their abuse. That's bad therapy. That's not therapy. But that's what you get. That's most of the therapists here will tell you that you're wrong for feeling bad about things that are bad, and will tell you to feel better so that the bad things can continue getting worse. Definitely. Having to recount my worst traumatic memories every week, being told to just feel them, and then getting cut off mid-breakdown because we've reached our time limit, and being left to deal with the fallout myself, all the while getting fake trauma memories implanted in me by the therapist. Being told that this is the work, though I saw no improvement after 4 years. I've been able to take control of my life back and not let the trauma dominate every moment of my existence. Getting cut off mid-breakdown because we've reached our time limit. High-key, this isn't talked about enough. This is so traumatic. After this happened to me, I'd wait for the train home and I'd be full-on disassociated. Being forced to shut down my disclosure in such a sterile manner is just so inhumane. It was for this specific reason I couldn't tolerate seeing my therapist for much longer. It was too disorienting, and no aftercare was even offered. Just, time's up. Yeah, it sucks. Like, now I am left with my thoughts until next session, and it would become so much worse by then, and then again in the next session, time's up. Every session would feel like explaining the trauma from last session. It's one of the 1,000 reasons why I quit therapy for good last month. I don't like being repetitive talking about trauma or other stuff we've already discussed in previous sessions. I don't like revisiting the past over stuff that I didn't even have control over in the first place. And on top of that, I had nothing new to talk about because I don't really have much of a social life outside of work anyway. There's a YouTube video where someone talked about being so upset by the therapy session that it took her 3 tries to make out the check because she couldn't write. This was a while ago, and she was legit scared to drive home. I remember this because I got lightheaded while getting my blood drawn, and the phlebotomist had to stay in the room with me until they could see I was visibly better and okay to drive. They offered me food and to call a cab or family member if I needed. But I remember after this one therapy session, I was obviously really messed up, and the therapist was like, okay, bye, have a nice drive home. And I chose to sit in the waiting room for a half hour before I felt safe to drive the car. My therapist had zero cares what happened to me after I left the room. And they talk about how safe it is. It's really dehumanizing. I think it communicates that you are only loved by the hour. I think therapy at its core is a very unhealthy thing. It's not that you need the right therapist. I know this is a currently unpopular opinion even here, but I think therapy undermines your ability to believe in yourself fundamentally by deferring to an authority figure to tell you what reality is, and what it means, who does not experience your life and has no consequences for your actions, none of your responsibilities, and no accountability. I think the entire concept of therapy is deeply problematic. I think it's telling how therapy has become so dogmatic that criticizing it anywhere is like you insulted someone's religion. I agree. I agree 100%, and I'm very curious why this person was deleted. Reddit mods often censor people. It's fucked up. I feel like the therapist shouldn't stop a session like that. A therapist should listen till the end. Well, I think what they're saying is that they were there for like an hour or for like 50 minutes or like whatever the session time is. But by the end of the session, they were going through this really like big breakdown. And the therapist just says, well, 50 minutes is 50 minutes. I can't stay here even though you're crying and even though like you're going to be worse off next week. But like the thing is, from the therapist's perspective, it's good for them. It's good for them if you're feeling more distressed than when you came in, because that means they'll have more to do next week. And that means they'll be able to queue up more weeks in the future. They don't actually want to resolve any of your problems. They get paid the longer they sustain your problems. It's really fucked up and backwards. And so, like, I don't necessarily expect a therapist to stay past the time, like if they've only got 50 minutes or an hour scheduled and you go over that time and like they gotta go, especially if they have another appointment. I understand that, but it should be acknowledged that this has real effects on the patients, and like maybe we need to redo the whole therapy system. Maybe this whole system is not good. 100% this. I've never thought about it during, but to be honest, it's so damaging that after a session you have to pick up the pieces. I remember after my first EMDR session, my psychologist said to my mom, she might be emotional, but that's normal, and just walked off. Like, how was my mom supposed to help me or herself with that advice? For us, this kind of therapy was completely new. Surely a psychologist could give us more tools than that. And one thing I really hate is when a therapist uses the, you will improve, but you need to want to work for it. You don't want to work for it, or you're not open to it. Especially like you said, when you see no improvement and you tell your therapist that. Yeah, the shitty therapist that I was paying for, she was talking about her former work as a social worker. And she was like, yeah, there's some people that just don't want help. Like, what? I don't think that's true. I think the system you were using to deliver them, quote unquote, help was doing more harm than good, and they were being honest about that. But yeah, sure, blame the victim, you stupid fucking therapist. This is the work is such religious language. I hope more people wake up to what is happening here. Yeah, it's, the taking the abuse, tolerating the abuse. That's what you do for the rest of the life. You don't fix any of the problems. No, the work is in you feeling the pain. That's what you do for the rest of your life. Isn't that great? Best I've been in years. Finally, no one is forcing me to repeat my trauma history incessantly. Yeah, I'm sure there are good social workers out there. It's tough because a lot of them are bound by the systems that they work in. And like, I think my former therapist just didn't realize, just couldn't like lift her head up to see that she was making the problems worse and not better. It's not that the victims didn't want help, it's that she wasn't providing help. She was making things worse.